My name is Kimberly Way, and I'm the Director of Training with the Michigan Works Association. And we are so happy you're joining us for the Apprenticeship Launch Network number 7 Veterans Apprenticeship. I'm just going to let everybody get started. They're pretty much experts on this by now. So welcome, and we will see you later.
Thank you, Kimberly, and good morning to everyone. We're pretty excited for Apprenticeship Launch Network Module 7. As
I'm not hearing anything.
Is that Tiffany?
No, that was Lori Spicer speaking. I'm hearing you just fine. This is Carrie speaking.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Appreciate the sound check. And Christine, can you send Lori Spicer a telephone number as well, just in case?
Yep, I'll put the phone number in the chat if people are not hearing the audio for their computer.
Okay, so we'll check the chat if we need to get a hold of the phone number, please. Okay, and I am sharing our agenda for the session today. This is Launch Network 7 Veterans Apprenticeship. And our agenda for today, which kind of will set guidelines, it's a little bit like the Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's the code, but it's also sort of a guideline. We'll do as good as we can to stick to it. And we will have Russ with some welcome and opening remarks this morning. And then we'll have session 1, which is remarks from Senator Peters' office. Excuse me. Andy Ridgway with USDOL veteran legislation. And we're going to take a break. And then in session 2, we're going to talk about updates to the GI Bill program and the approval process. In session 3, we're going to walk through some USDOL standards with the veteran addendum attached. We're privileged to look at a best practice from Southeast Michigan, where Rebecca and Lori have worked together with Mark and others to put together VES and ASC, so Veterans Employment Services and Apprenticeship Success Coordinator presentation. We're going to talk about MVAA, why Michigan, and actually, Christine, for your information, Dave Dunkel's calling me, so I'll follow up with him next. And then we'll wrap up with questions and answers in a closing session. Good morning, Russ. Thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours. Excuse me.
Good morning, Scott, and thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Russ Davis. I'm the State Director for Office of Apprenticeship, the United States Department of Labor. I welcome you to this Apprenticeship Launch Network number 7 Veterans Apprenticeship. It's been a pleasure working with this team and putting this together. It was last fall. I was invited to a meeting at local 85 in Saginaw, Michigan, pipe fitter plumbers, and Senator Peters was the guest speaker there. And at that session, Senator Peters had just announced, or was announcing the act that he was putting in front of Congress. And what this act was, it's the support for the veterans, in effect, Apprenticeship Act of 2019. And this it went into effect September 22nd, 2020. The primary purpose of this law is to enable registered apprenticeship programs to better service veterans by facilitating their awareness of access and to certain educational assistant benefits provided under Title 38 of U.S. Code post 9/11 GI educational benefits. Prior to this, the United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship had been doing a pretty good job at awareness for the veterans through helmets to hard hats in our selection procedure. But we had been missing the boat on a lot of our other sponsors and apprenticeships for the awareness for the veterans on what benefits they were entitled to with the registered apprenticeship. Today, Michigan has nearly a little over 19,000 registered apprenticeships with 1,055 sponsors. And we want to make sure that we're doing a great job in providing awareness for these services to all those sponsors. It was just recently that Andrew Ridgway, Division Chief, came on board with our office in Washington, D.C., and he'll be following up, explaining more about this. But Andrew took this under his wing to make sure that we had a circular, changed the boilerplates to make this more aware for all of us, the apprentice trained reps, the ASCs, that when you have these boilerplates, that you're aware of this addendum, and that sponsors have awareness to what this information for the benefits for the veterans through these educational benefits. So with that, I want to turn it back over to Scott. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening. I know we're going to have probably many questions, I hope, and I look forward to helping all the veterans we have in the field, currently in apprenticeships, in those possibly in apprenticeships for this benefit. Scott, thank you.
You're welcome, Russ, and thank you. Any questions for Russ this morning? Well, we appreciate everybody's attendance, and I can't tell for sure. Montel, are you on the line? Okay. One moment, please.
She's not listed in the participants.
Okay, thank you. And then next up, we'll swap our 8:45, 25 minutes. Andrew Ridgway, I'm looking at you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to see you. Appreciate your help and your willingness to be on board with us this morning for our event. Thanks, Russ Davis, for setting it up. And is Andy okay, or you prefer Andrew?
I'm only Andrew when I'm in trouble or something like this. So Andy's totally good.
Andy, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Great to meet you virtually. And we're excited to have you with us and to share a little bit about what's happening from your perspective. So please proceed. And in the meantime, I'll see if I can connect with Montel.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. And thanks to the team here and getting me logged in. Last minute, I had to create a little drama in logging in, but I appreciate everyone's quick response, and I was able to get in no problem. So good morning. And thanks to Russ and everyone on this call for inviting me to join today. We're very excited. I'd been very familiar with the work of Michigan Works from my previous job. I was previously in the Department of Labor on the Office of Workforce Investment side, working on the WIOA programs. So I know Michigan Works does a lot of work with WIOA. So I really strongly believe in the mission of the work that you all have been doing and finding partnerships and ways for us to advance apprenticeships for individuals as well, and just another tool for that process. But yeah, I appreciate being invited today to talk a little bit more about the Support for Veterans and Effective Apprenticeships Act of 2019, as Russ highlighted. There's been a couple pieces of legislation over the last couple of years, of course, Support for Veterans and Effective Apprenticeships Act, which I'll talk more about. And there was also the Valor Act, which was passed last year. And really, you know, the overriding goal of these pieces of legislation is kind of, you know, making sure that we're, you know, connecting the dots between, you know, for specifically for veterans as they, you know, leave the military, they get their VA benefits, and then also making sure that we, you know, there's a smooth handoff for veterans that are looking to get into apprenticeship programs and able to use their benefits. And so I think those are kind of the overarching, you know, goals. Of course, they have specific requirements to it, but the overarching goal is, you know, how do we make sure we're connecting with federal agencies, with state agencies, you know, within state agencies, with programs, to make sure that, you know, that veterans are getting the full suite of, you know, benefits that they're entitled to and that they earn through their service. And so before I get into the Support for Veterans and Effective Apprenticeships Act, the Valor Act really just had one main goal, and that was to make sure that as DOL recognizes national program standards of apprenticeship, to make sure that we share that list with the Department of Veterans Affairs and with the state approving agencies. And I'm excited to see that you have the state approving agency on this agenda too, because I think that's a huge connection. So I'm very glad that you've already got that and have a strong relationship there, because I think that's really one of the keys of this is having that strong relationship. So, but it's really just to share, you know, as DOL registers national programs, to make sure that, you know, we're facilitating that connection in multiple states and things like that. So just wanted to make sure I took a moment to highlight that legislation. But I will talk real quick about the Support for Veterans and Effective Apprenticeships Act. As Russ said, it was passed. It's the Effective Apprenticeships Act of 2019, but I think it was technically passed in 2020, and it did go into effect on September 22nd, 2020. So this is the 1 month anniversary of it going into effect. And it had a 180-day implementation date, and there's kind of three key provisions that I think Russ alluded to a little bit already, but it was wanting to make sure that sponsors provide assurances to military veterans about the availability of GI Bill benefits while participating in an apprenticeship program. So making sure that when a military veteran registers to be in an apprenticeship program, that, you know, they're aware that, hey, you might be able to use your GI Bill benefits while you're in this program to get your monthly housing allowance while participating. Now, again, they may or may not elect to, they may want to, you know, use it for other purposes, but we want to make sure that they're aware that they can do that, and that the sponsors are also aware that they should be advertising that. So as Russ said, we did change the boilerplates that went out earlier last month to make sure that there's an addendum or a part of it where the sponsor attests that they are making military veterans aware of those benefits that they may be entitled to, that they, you know, and that they don't, you know, for whatever reason, not allow veterans into an apprenticeship because of that, for whatever reason. So that's one of the key tenets, is updating the boilerplates to make sure that, you know, that there's language there. And I think you're doing a walkthrough of the boilerplates later today. Did I see that on the agenda? So that'll be, you'll see the language. So I won't bore you with the details, but the legal language is in there. So I appreciate that you'll be going through that. So the second provision is that to the extent practicable, that sponsors recognize the previous military experience that the veteran may have received while in the military as it applies to the apprenticeship program they may be in. We did issue a circular 2020-04 on that. And really, it wasn't a new requirement per se. I think, as you're probably familiar, registered apprenticeships already required to recognize advanced standing for previous experience when it applies to whatever occupation they're going into. But it really just wanted to make it clear that, hey, a military experience also can do this. And we wanted to make sure that we got the message out about how they can do that. And so that circular, I encourage you to read it when you get a chance. I view it more as a technical assistance kind of document for sponsors and programs. We do lift up some tools that DOL sponsors, that the VA sponsors, and other entities sponsor to help sponsors recognize and translate those skills. So there's some tools that I think sponsors could use and programs could use to help identify, all right, maybe this veteran can get advanced standing in this program or not. So definitely take a look when you get some time with that. And then the third major piece of that legislation was trying to facilitate the connection with the state approving agencies with the VA. And when new programs get registered, that we make sure that we share the program registration with the state approving agencies. So, if Michigan registers a new program, that the state approving agency gets a copy of that so that they can, recognize them for GI benefits and go from there. So we have facilitated an electronic process for the OA states. So Michigan being, quote, an OA state for this purpose, whenever programs get registered in Michigan, that this certification is going to the state approving agency, or should be at this point. Of course, they may still have some questions, and so I'm so glad that you have those relationships in place, because it doesn't replace the need to follow up and connect and do other things, but it at least kind of shows that there's been some connections made. So we've automated that process in Rapids. So and we're excited about that as well. So let's see. So yeah, like I said, the big things were revising the boilerplates, and then issuing that circular on the advanced standing, and then developing this IT data sharing process so that we can get registrations out were kind of the key components of it. We also did issue a circular to the state apprenticeship agencies to let them know that they need to do it as well. That's probably not as relevant for this audience, but that was just another piece of it, just to make sure that this applies to the whole registered apprenticeship system and not, SAA states or OA states. So I think those are the major high points of the legislation. Does anyone, I'd be happy to address any questions or any bigger picture questions you may have. Again, yeah, I joined the apprenticeship in May as the division director for registered apprenticeship programs. So I'm very excited to be here and working on these and advancing apprenticeships. So I'm, again, very excited to be able to join this today. And so happy to try and field any questions you may have.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Andy. So that's super informative. And I think you hit all the right areas, and already we're learning, right? So there was a pretty decent process initiative, and then the advanced standing and the idea of any kind of templates, I think, for that makes good sense and could be pretty helpful, right? Even though, as you mentioned, and Russ reminds us, it's always been there, right? Mm-hmm. But it's cool to have some tools to help make it happen, right? Because we don't want to stumble, we want it to work, right?
Absolutely.
And then the IT is also exciting. And then any questions that anybody has about that process, or something that Andy has mentioned for us?
I do have one more thing I just remembered that I think I can talk about. So the last piece of it is we are, you may be familiar with the 671 forms for registering programs. We are in the process of updating that. Of course, we have to go through the OMB process, but the 671 forms also will be updated to include this language in the future around the Veterans Act. Of course, we were able to put in the boilerplates ahead of time, but we are going to make sure that the 671 forms are updated in due time as well. So
Excellent, thank you.
great.
So questions or comments, please? Hearing none.
We don't have any
Oh.
questions in the chat at the time.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Yep,
Yeah, I gotta
hearing,
look over there.
hearing none. What we'll do,
Andy, this
go
is
ahead.
Russ. Appreciate you coming on and fully explaining what all the work you did there. And as we move forward out in the field and sharing these new boilerplates and addendum to our potential sponsors and our sponsors, it's going to greatly help these veterans. And so thank you very much. We appreciate it here in Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great team of people, as you mentioned. Thank you for the agenda check, because that is helpful. I mean, right, we see the information and Russ does a great job and his team of keeping us up to speed. And we're pretty honored to be part of the program and to try and promote all of the opportunities. And this session for us today, Andy, is really important as we tie together our veterans activities even more closely with our registered apprenticeship activities. And as you mentioned a couple of times, thank you, right? It's really the key to get SAA involved and NVAA involved in the presentation that we're going to have later is an example of VES services working with Apprenticeship Success Coordinators through the WIOA workforce development regions, right? And so just really sincere thanks and appreciation for your joining us this morning for the overview, and thank you for the work that you do to help us expand registered apprenticeship.
Well, we're happy to do it, and happy, you know, if there's questions that come up throughout the day. I'm really excited that you have a whole session dedicated to this important topic, and you're getting into the details of it too. So I really appreciate that, and you have all the right stakeholders at the table. So from what I can tell, it looks like you're very on point with all the work you're doing. So congrats to all of you and kudos for being part of this.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for the kind words. We always try to remember, right, at the state level, we try to support apprenticeship expansion, but as you know, it happens with all the people on the call, right, in the regions is where the expansion takes place. So again, thank you so much.
Yep, appreciate it.
Okay,
There is a question in the chat.
thank you.
So
Yes, there is. How long does it take to complete the process for the employer?
So just, are we talking about to actually create a registered program or to do this the veterans piece of it? The veterans piece, if we're just talking about the veterans piece, it should be fairly short. It's really just an attestation by the employer that, you know, they're taking into consideration, you know, their veteran, you know, the veterans experience, and that they're not going to, you know, reject a veteran into the program because of that process. So I think, as you'll see when you go through the boilerplates later today, that in and of itself should be a very minimally burdensome threshold, I think. So I hope that answers the question, but feel free to type more in if you have more to that.
Yep, thank you. That's a great question. And we will have on the agenda an opportunity for Troy Tissue to go through the process as well for this from the state approving agency perspective, which will really help, I think, put timing and process, kind of bring it together, I guess maybe is a way to say it. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, great question.
And anybody else? Andy, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks to all of you.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and Montel is not on the line. Is that correct? Just checking. I didn't receive any response to text messages. So
That is correct. She's still not here.
thank you very much. So we're going to plan that he's not here, and actually we will go to agenda plan B here and put David Dunkel on the spot and see how he responds to that. Actually, then this version of the agenda will show Andy running first and then MVAA, why Michigan. David, are you able to respond on the moment to the agenda change?
I most certainly can.
Thank you. Thanks.
So,
I'm going to stop sharing. Do you have something to share, David, or are you going to talk through it?
we can just talk through it. I
Okay, great.
have that veteran-friendly certification document. I don't have it pulled up right now, but what I wanted to talk about when it comes to the veteran perspective, in Michigan is in a somewhat unique situation in that 55% of our veteran population is over 65 years old. So they're leaving the workforce at a much greater rate than they're entering the workforce. So workforce participation in the veteran community is dropping considerably. The veteran population in the state of Michigan has dropped 30% in the last 10 years. We used to have about almost 700,000 veterans, and we're down around 550,000 veterans now. So as an agency, not only do we take care of Michigan veterans and try to steer them into the right career pathways, we're also very actively seeking out transitioning service members and their families to attract them to Michigan. So either have them return back home if Michigan was their home of record when they entered, or to entice them through opportunity to choose Michigan as a place to live, work, raise a family, and retire. And we do that in a few different ways. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were traveling to military installations across the country and presenting why Michigan to transitioning service members and their families face-to-face at things like hiring events and transition assistance classes. We also held national veteran workforce development conferences here in the state. We did 2 of them in Detroit, and that was taking all the key players from the veteran transition world and bringing them all into one place to trade best practices, things like that. So Michigan can use some improvement when it comes to the number of GI Bill registered apprenticeships, because that's a great selling tool. What we're doing now is we're holding a series of virtual events as opposed to traveling to these military installations. So we have a Why Michigan infomercial basically that is shown by the transition assistance offices to the transitioning service members and their family. And then that we talk in general terms about why Michigan is such a great place, how many different educational or employment opportunities. We talk about apprenticeships, we talk about entrepreneurialism, we talk about traditional and non-traditional career paths. And then we follow that up with virtual hiring events. So tomorrow, we're holding a virtual hiring event that's focusing on transitioning service members in Fort Bragg, Hunter Army Airfield, Fort Stewart, Georgia, and Norfolk Navy Base. And it's about careers in energy. So there's a lot of apprenticeships in the energy industry. And that's one thing about the COVID-19 pandemic. It hasn't affected the energy industry very much. I mean, you still have to have that infrastructure. You still have to have those grids out running. So they're hiring, and they really understand the value of a veteran and are actively seeking that. So tomorrow we're hosting this hiring event exclusively for careers in energy. Next month, we're going to be holding one that focuses on law enforcement opportunities, which has a big draw for the veteran community. And at the same time, we're excited to be working with Scott and Kevin and Russ and Rebecca and everybody else to expand the number of GI Bill certified apprenticeships that we have in this state. More and more non-traditional I've been talking to retailers who want to start apprenticeships. I've been talking to healthcare systems who have started or want to expand the number of apprenticeships they have in the healthcare industry. So I'm excited to be here. This is all part of our veteran-friendly certification program. We have 394 companies that have signed on. Unfortunately, there was only 6 that we could find that had registered apprenticeships. So we're going to focus on our veteran-friendly certified employers because they're a somewhat captive audience and they listen to us. And so November 4th, we're holding a workshop during National Apprenticeship Week where we're inviting employers and basically showing them how to set the standards, how to become a sponsor, how to expand apprenticeship opportunities within their organizations, and how to make sure that those apprenticeship opportunities are GI Bill registered. And that's about all I got, Scott.
Actually, that's a lot, Dave, and well presented. Thank you. And thanks for stepping in the moment, right? So
Yeah.
we did get some news. Thank you, Russ. So Montel actually had an emergency in Flint this morning and is at the hospital with his son. So we wish him the best and hope that things work out. And we're sorry that he couldn't join us, especially under those conditions. So that's the update. But Dave, thank you so much for stepping in this morning. Any questions or comments for Dave? Questions about the program?
Yes, this is Calvita Collins with the State of Michigan Veterans Employment Services, and I have a couple of questions, Dave. On November 12th, Lori, who represents SIMCA, and you'll hear from her in a moment, she and I are putting together a virtual veteran-focused apprenticeship. And what I was sharing with her over the past few weeks is that utilizing the veteran-friendly employer job list that's on the MVAA website, it doesn't indicate which of those employers have registered apprenticeships. And so she and I were talking this week as an update that I'm still trying to get that information. And just so happens, you mentioned that there's 4 employers that actually have a registered apprenticeship. And so my question to you right now, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but I have to do this, is I would love to have those employers be invited to our upcoming virtual apprenticeship fair that's on the 12th. So
certainly.
Hoping that we can get that information, have them register, and let them have a platform at that virtual event on the 12th. So I'm going to look by for the information. It sounds like you're in agreement. I thank you so much for sharing that information. And for the remaining veteran-friendly employers that do not have their registered apprenticeship, on the 10th, we're actually hosting the Employer 101. So at the end of this call, and Lori, I know you're on the line, if we can somehow talk about what that's going to look like and get those employers invited.
Sure.
But I don't want to take too much thunder from Lori, who's going to present here shortly.
Calvita, most employers just don't understand the value that registered apprenticeships bring to their organizations. I think they're somewhat daunted by the traditional European apprenticeship model and how complicated that was. But the expansion office has really helped streamline things. So yeah, I certainly, Kevin, Chow, and Scott were the ones that scrubbed my list for me and were able to determine which of my employers did have registered apprenticeships. So I'll make sure we share that information with you, and then you can reach out and invite them, or I can invite them on your behalf.
Thank you kindly. And then my last question, at the opening of your presentation, you talked about how you're reaching out to veteran transitioning service members. We as me, were wondering, at one point in time, General Robert Smith had a list of, or access to those returning service members. Had there been any progress, if you will, on how we're identifying those transitioning service members that are returning to Michigan?
Yes, we just reached an agreement with the Department of Defense that allows us access to a database that shows where transitioning service members have chosen to move. They have the opportunity to opt in if they want to be contacted by a state agency. So as they transition out of the military and they go through the transition assistance program, it's called, they will have that opportunity to say, yes, I want somebody from Michigan Secretary of State or from Michigan's Veterans Affairs Agency to contact me when I return home. But it is an opt-in / opt-out thing. And quite a few returning veterans don't want a state agency to bother them. It's sensitive information in that it's got addresses on it. It's got personally identifying information. So we took us a couple years to get access to that from the Department of Defense, but they are reporting it to us now on a monthly basis, so we can keep track of how many soldiers are leaving. And when I say soldiers, I'm talking airmen, Marines, Navy, Army, all of them. So we can kind of keep track of how many of them have left Michigan and how many are returning to Michigan. And we are reaching out to those who have asked us to reach out to them.
Yeah, and my last question is, on the MVA website, is there a list of all of the staff members for each of the different regions? I think my last point of contact was Joe Parrish. I would love to reach out and find out who else is in the remaining sectors of my region.
Yeah, that was Josh Parrish probably. And we've totally revamped that program. We don't have those targeted outreach individuals anymore. That that was a grant-based program. And so those, I think we had 12 individuals actually, regional outreach coordinators. They're no longer, we don't have them anymore. So we're standing
for that input. I would have loved to partner with them to get that apprenticeship information sent out. So I appreciate the update.
Yeah, we're starting a new program called CORE that's volunteer based, and we'll have volunteer representatives in each of the prosperity regions. And our new website's getting launched on January 1st. It's going to be totally redone. I hope that answered your question, Kavita.
Yes, sir, it did. Thank you, everyone, for the time to allow me to ask all those questions.
That's okay.
Great questions. So thank you so much. We do have a couple that actually entered the chat as well, Dave. So is the November 4th workshop open to employers who already have a registered apprenticeship? And what will be the content of that meeting? So great question. Thank you, Evelyn. And the answer is yes, it will be open to employers who already have registered apprenticeship. It would be a great fit for them because the meeting is going to focus on adding or revising. So adding occupations or revising a set of program standards. Registered apprenticeship for those employers that don't have it. But then for employers that do have it, Dave is going to be inviting the veteran-friendly employer list with hopes to expand opportunities there as well. And Troy Tissue is willing to present in small breakout sessions. He's going to be talking about the process, much like this morning in a shorter version, about how employers go about seeking approval to be able to offer the GI Bill program benefits. So that's kind of an overview of the content. And does that leave any questions? Or comments? Okay, thank you. So Dave, thanks so much for jumping in there. Appreciate it. And we are moving along. So our next agenda item is a break. We're at 9:12. So our break's set at 10 minutes. So at 9:22, I'll do the math for us. We're going to resume activities here. And if I can find that timer, Christy. Okay, so we are moving from our break session. We're ahead of schedule, which is awesome. And we're moving into session 2. with GI Bill updates. So any comments or questions from this morning's session so far? A couple of footnotes here as we move into session 2. First of all, special thanks to Kevin Chow for developing the planning team meetings that led up to the event today, and then making sure that we're all on track, to the Michigan Works Association for hosting the event with us today. Thanks for your help and participation. And then Russ, special thanks to you for pulling in Andrew this morning for us. That was a treat, and I can't even imagine what his schedule looks like. So I really appreciate you pulling him into this event. And actually his observations, I think, are kind of a tribute to the team here and the work that gets done in Michigan. So thank you for making that possible.
Thanks, Scott. Great working with you.
Okay, so Troy, we are gonna put the spotlight on your activities here for a few minutes. We want to thank you for being willing to present with us today. I love that Andy mentioned that you're kind of the key to success here. And so thanks for your willingness to participate today. And then again on the 4th, where we go through this with an employer audience as well, and then in the future. So thank you for what you do, and good morning.
Oh, not a problem. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't know if you folks want video or not. I really, I got a face for radio, so. But nonetheless, if Dave Dunkel's still on, I think Tiffany and I would appreciate if he would sing the Navy fight song for us, but he may not know that word for word. So we'll just move forward here. Let me see if technology can allow me to get to where I need to be. As far as can everybody see the slideshow?
We are looking at it. It looks good. PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
And now we're in full screen view with people on top. Thank you.
Very good. My thought was to maybe kind of roll through this and be able to allow for questions and answers towards the end. So if folks can take copious notes and hit me up afterwards, that would be great. And again, thank you, Scott, Kevin as well, for really helping kind of put this together. Always enjoy getting a national shout out for the state approving agencies by the division chief for the USDOL. Appreciate Andy's comments, and which actually leads me into saying that although law has been enacted over the last 2 or 3 years, meaning the Valor Act, as well as S 760, a little bit closer to home, sponsored by Senator Peters, support for the Veterans and Effective Apprenticeships Act. Although those things mandate collaboration by law, it's always been a pleasure to work with Russ Davis, the DOL team, and to be able to collaborate with them in supporting our veterans. So even before law kind of mandated a couple T's being crossed and I's being dotted between the USDOL and the state approving agencies, we were already there anyway. And so that's kind of where that's at. So let me kind of explain for those that have no idea what this apprenticeships and GI Bill thing is all about. Essentially, although it was not initially established in the 1940s with the enactment of the GI Bill, over the course of years, apprenticeship training and on-the-job training have come into law as being a method for veterans to not only receive training, many times vocational training, but also to be able to utilize their GI Bill benefits. If you just talk to somebody on the street generally and somebody says, yeah, I'm using my GI Bill, the retort will be, oh, really? What college or university are you going to? Well, that's not necessarily the case. whereas veterans can now utilize their GI Bill benefits while they're in training in apprenticeship programs. And we'll I'll kind of walk through that with my 83 slide presentation PowerPoint for the next, no, I'm just kidding, Scott. He probably would start cutting me off. But anyway, we do have a few slides to go over, a little bit of introductory of why it's for businesses, for employers, why it's so, in my opinion, so critical for them to look towards the veteran population. And we'll just kind of move through the GI Bill program, how that works for veterans, and because I think that probably would benefit all those here in attendance. So let's see if I can go forward. Look at there. Okay. So what I want to do is talk initially about available pools, and Dave Dunkel kind of mentioned this. And that is, and of course, this is based on the US Census of 2010. The 2020 results have obviously not been probably even tabulated yet, let alone released. But the veteran population within the state of Michigan, it is elderly. It is just a fraction, if you will. I mean, you can imagine what these numbers are showing you when it comes to Vietnam era, World War II, Korea veterans. Those horizontal bars are even smaller now, based, quite frankly, on those veterans passing away. Gulf War II is probably becoming larger, if you will, but not by much. And if you go down to the age distribution, you'll see that tracks pretty much right in line with what Dave was saying, meaning elderly. So is the veteran population going to be a boon as far as for overall population for employers to seek and gain access to? Likely not. But what is the veteran population going to hold for the employer who decides to pursue that? I'll mention, I'll kind of go into this next slide with that thought. This is data that was taken from publication. It's a free publication, so if you wish to go further into it, you're welcome to. It was a collaborative effort. It's called Knocking at the College Door, a collaborative effort, easy for me to say, between WICHE, which is Western College, I can't remember the acronym in totality as far as what it means, but between WICHE and ACT. I think many people have heard of either, taking the ACT or the SAT regarding entering college. They did a deep dive into a lot of data material, meaning a lot with the ACT, which parallels, quite frankly, somewhat closely with the SAT. And this particular slide deals with high school graduates and the forecast. So as you can see, the state of Michigan is one of those, half a dozen states that are in the critical decrease when it comes to high school graduates. That doesn't mean the high schools are failing. They're just not any good. They're not graduating people. Not at all. Quite frankly, it's cumulative to two things. One is chiefly birth rates from, roughly 18, 20 years ago, meaning what is populating your high schools at this time. Another is in roughly 2008 through 11, if you were to do a little bit of Google research and you were to go on to Atlas Van Line's data, actually I think the Mackinac Institute also published this, and that was the majority of the moves, because that industry tracks where moves are made, meaning Atlas Van Lines. The majority of moves in the state of Michigan between 08 and 11 were outbound, meaning that people were looking for jobs, they were taking their families, they were leaving. So, collectively, it is additive to this decrease in high school graduation rates. And yes, it is happening throughout the nation, but you can see Michigan is if you will, a critical color. So if you take the high school graduation populations, which are dwindling, in my opinion, although the veteran population is smaller, it is just that much more critical to be able to help feed the workforce when these young men and women are coming back from their periods of active duty. So that's kind of a little bit of a background aspect. Now, the GI Bill. So the GI Bill can be utilized for apprenticeship training, on-the-job training. There are approximately 4, if you will, types of GI Bill, or chapters as the VA calls them. Chapter 30, 33, 35, and 1606. There was also a 1607, but that was sunsetted in 2019. And if somebody mentions Chapter 33, it's also synonymous with the post 9/11 GI Bill. I think it was Andy who mentioned the Valor Act, and he probably did that because that's a national DOL collaborative program with SAAs, state approving agencies. The part of the Valor Act also allowed for veterans that left active duty service and were eligible for GI Bill benefits effective 1 January of 2013. Those GI Bill benefits are now lifetime. Whereas prior to the passage of the Valor Act, which was in, I think, 19 or 18, the GI Bill was available to a veteran 15 years after becoming eligible for it. And after that, 15 years in 1 day, if they had not used that benefit, totally gone, off the books, not available. So the Valor Act really helped those veterans that maybe got off active duty, maybe didn't know what they wanted to do, didn't pursue their GI Bill, whether it was apprenticeship or college, because it's the same GI Bill. It's just paid out in different benefit aspects, whether you go to college or an apprenticeship. And so these folks essentially now have a lifetime benefit. So years later, they can decide to change careers, enter the workforce through maybe an apprenticeship, and still be able to get their GI Bill benefits. So what I'm going to do is roll through basically what the GI Bill benefits are for the veteran, and then towards the end of the presentation, and Scott, please kind of keep me on a timeline, because I can either be verbose or I can be rather short, and I'm not paying attention to the time.
You're doing good. You're doing great. Thank you.
So I will probably get done early if that helps anybody. Cheers with your coffee mugs right now. Okay. So let's talk about Chapter 33. Chapter 33 is rather unique because if an apprenticeship is approved by the USDOL, it then has to be, and this is holistic across all the chapters, it then has to be approved by the state approving agency. Now, the USDOL and Russ and his team, they write the standards, they work with the employer, they build the entire set of standards, and you'll get all that, I believe, later. Once that work is done, then it's up to the employer, although now with support of the veterans in effective apprenticeships with that law, we're also notified by the DOL that they've approved a employer in the state of Michigan, as that happens. But it is really up to the employer to come to the state approving agency and request approval. It's not automatic. The law is not, federal law is not set that way. So as they come to us, we then review the standards. They have to fill out a couple other documents, and you'll see that later on. And we will give approval. So once the folks, if you will, once the employer has been approved, if it's a Chapter 33 veteran that has entered into the workforce for, I don't know, so hopefully I'm not going to be promoting a particular employer, but let's say let's hark back to Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Acme, screw, and die. Okay, so if Acme, screw, and die have come to the state approving agency with a complete set of standards and said, we want to train veterans, we want to hire veterans, and yes, we understand this GI Bill thing, and we think it's a boon for us. So we'll go through that process. Now Acme Screw has been approved, and now they're either out recruiting veterans, because you can do that, or they're waiting for them to come in. But now a veteran has come in, and they've hired that veteran. The veteran says, I'm a Chapter 33 individual. So what is going to happen for a Chapter 33? Their benefits are based on a couple things. One is how long in service they did serve, which has absolutely nothing to do with what the employer is going to offer regarding training. Or the other thing is, what is the zip code of that employer? And the reason that's important is because the benefits for a Chapter 33 individual start with the basic allowance for housing, which is a federal allowance system. You can look it up. It's called BAH. Is based on the zip code of that employer. And I'll kind of show you a little bit more momentarily. And how the payment, the benefit payment is made is as essentially the trainee comes in at the bottom of the pay scale at the beginning wages for an apprenticeship, their benefits are paid in a larger amount. Then as the training progresses and the pay generally increases with step wages. Hello, Russ, are you talking to me? Hello, hello, can you hear me? No, I'm just kidding. As the wage increases with the employer, as you can start to see there in the training period and monthly rate, the benefits start to decrease. And I'll kind of show you that. And that's just the way the federal law is set up. So it really, if you have a young veteran that has gotten off of active duty and he or she, has left active duty, maybe 4 years, they've done well, they've progressed in their pay grades, and maybe they have a family, maybe they have a young child, maybe two, who knows? But bottom line is, as we all know, then it's quite a endeavor for that young veteran, if you will, to start over again and supporting their family, et cetera. And again, yes, they're starting at the bottom of the wage scale, but yet, we all believe that through that progressive wage scale, it's a great thing for an apprenticeship, not only the wages, but of course, learning the vocation, skill, and trade. So as they're starting, the benefits pay larger for the GI Bill. So I always think that that's a nice, I don't want to really say cushion, but that's a nice caveat to the benefit payment process. So as I was mentioning, it's almost between what is paid and what is from the employer, and what the benefits are really inverse. So if we start on the left side of this slide, we say, okay, GI Bill benefits. And I kind of try to give you some examples. These are zip codes from, the first one is Michigan. I can't remember the exact city. I think the second one, so 48088. So that's what a veteran would start out per month from his or her benefits if they were in a full-time apprenticeship. That's per month. That is paid directly to the veteran. It doesn't, go through the employer, and the employer then has to, oh great, I got more book work to do. That doesn't happen at all. The employer basically submits hours once a month, how many hours Johnny or Susie worked, and the VA will then pay the veteran directly, direct deposit, etc. This, what you see, that $17.94 is also tax-free. It is a educational benefit that the veteran receives. And the next one down might be the 9210. It's on the West Coast. I think maybe I picked San Diego. So you can now start to see that if a veteran is whatever, it doesn't matter, a tree trimmer, a plumber, an electrician, their generally their wage scale is not only different from where they're at in the country, but also their benefit payment will be different. Just because they're a plumber in Michigan in an apprenticeship and getting the GI Bill benefits, doesn't mean they're getting the same benefits as that plumber apprenticeship in San Diego. And the next one down, the 303, I think is the Atlanta area. So once again, just kind of giving you some examples of how that can be different. And then if you drop straight down where it says apprenticeship or apprentice competency and income, it's kind of how I explained it. You know, the income and the competency in that field is low at that time, and the benefits are high. And then as they become more competent in their vocation and their wages start to increase, then you'll see that, you won't, but the veteran will then see that the GI Bill benefits start to decrease. That was chapter 33. Not that you have to memorize all these, but nonetheless, this is just informational. This is chapter 30. It pays at a different rate. It's not based on the hourly. It is solely based on, this is the amount you're going to get, excuse me, for the first 6 months of training, second 6 months of training, and the remainder of training. And once again, that doesn't really matter whether it's a 3-year, whether it's a 4-year period of training, etc. This is a chapter example, chapter 1606. Obviously, the payment is considerably less. It's just what the veteran happened to enter into as far as whether it was, I left 1607 up there. That's been sunsetted. You won't see that. But sometimes just affiliation through the reserve programs, depending on what chapter they came into, is less. But I mean, the same token, if they go on active duty as a reservist and they spend a long period of time, then they'll start to become eligible for chapter 33. So all is not lost in that regards. This is a chapter 35 example. Chapter 35 is just the long and the short of it is for a dependent, in other words, a spouse, a child of a veteran who has been, I'll say, gravely wounded or has lost their life. And those benefits can be brought to the surviving spouse and or child or children. Okay, so what I'd like to do is kind of go over just basically what it takes now to, once again, the employer is happy-go-lucky because in their left hand, they have now a signed off set of standards from Russ and the DOL team, excuse me, in the state of Michigan here. The state approving agency by law is responsible for then approving the, for GI Bill purposes, approving the employer and the standards. And how do we go about that? It's compared to building the standards, and I'm not saying it's not a smooth and a great process. I'm just saying time-wise, like what does the employer have to do? Time-wise, it's just icing on the cake. It's a piece of cake, if you will, compared to actually building the standards. Because all they have to do is they have to submit 2 federal forms. One of those, meaning the 8865, is 1 page. The excuse me, the designation of certifying officials, the 8794, is 2 pages, but the second page is simply a signature. So that almost doesn't qualify as 2 pages. They can be filled in with pen and ink, and then submission of the DOL registered apprenticeship program standards, and most importantly, the appendix that are applicable. Often they leave those off, and often we, actually don't approve them until they come back and get the include the appendix with those, because that essentially makes the standards complete. Once all 3 of these required documents are submitted, the state approving agency approval is generally completed within 30 days. So depending upon workload, but nonetheless, that is kind of how we push that through. Once we approve it, our actions actually have to still be reviewed by the VA. So it's sent to the VA in the state of Michigan, is down in, for our purpose, is down in the McNamara building in Detroit. We have a representative there who receives these type of approvals. She looks them over and does her quality review, making sure we're doing business the right way, and then adds concurrence to our approval. Once that concurrence is reached, and once again, about a 30-day period, depending on workload. Once that concurrence is reached, that employer, their name of the business, so what was it? Acme Screw and Die, maybe Acme Tool, whatever I used before. Excuse me. That will actually go on a national VA website that they've been approved for GI Bill programming. We're also standing up a state of Michigan site. We're in the process of fine tuning that and building that, which will allow for folks such as Michigan Works partners to be able to go in and take a look at regions or apprenticeship programs in a certain area where our veteran that's sitting across the table from you, or in this case on a video chat with you, may be interested in pursuing employment with that employer because they have GI Bill benefits available there. So as an employer, I think this is a really good tool. If we go back to those first two slides, and it's got, I'll say it's kind of a gloom and doom thing about, populations decreasing, to be able to try to glean your employment or employee pool from. Now, this is on the World Wide Web, it's national, and depending upon, of course, how Acme Screw and Die wants to recruit folks, whether they go nationally, whether they use any kind of leveraging web activity, but they can point back to, look, we're approved. It's on the VA website. It's on the state of Michigan website. Come work for us. You can start not only your great apprenticeship in our program or in our employment building here, but you can also get your GI Bill benefits. So a couple things. This is, I assume, I'm almost scared to go to the hot link and then come back, try to get back. Maybe I could do that successfully though. Do you think, Scott?
My guess would be yes. If you're sharing your full screen, I think when you go there, I think it'll go right there.
Okay, so I'm going to do that. So this is our website that will basically just step through. So if you say, well, that was quite a piece of 35-minute rambling from that guy named Troy from the state of Michigan. But if you wanted to go to this website, let's see if we can do that. Chugga chugga. Look at there. This is our website, and it's more robust than this, but I wanted to just bring you to the.
So Troy.
Oh, yes.
So I misled you a little bit. So we're still looking at your PowerPoint, which is clear, but we don't see the screen. You may have to reshare then the window with the website in it.
Okay, hold on. New share.
We're looking at it.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So, seafoam green. How nice. Do you like that, Tiffany? So, again, the site is considerably more robust. If you just kind of stumble on it, you'll see it talks about schools and non-diploma schools, because those VOTEC schools can be used for the GI Bill as well. But most importantly for our conversation here, this is the apprenticeship training, on-the-job training area. So basically it rolls through, and this is something that if you ever wanted to obviously bookmark and share with an employer, we encourage that. We love that. And talks about qualifications for apprenticeship training, qualifications for on the job, We don't do an inspection anymore because our friends at the DOL do that at the facilities. So we don't have to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to apply now. So in the long story short, our customer base is not the veteran. The state of Michigan approving agency's customer base is the employer. In this case, the employer is schools, whether it's a Michigan State, whether it's a Lansing Community College, whether it's a non-diploma granting school, like a VOTEC school. Those are our customers. But you got to keep in mind, although those are our direct customers, obviously it's all in support of who? The veteran. And that's what it's all about. So that's why all this is built. We just don't have daily interactions with veterans. So when it says qualifications for apprenticeship training, and down the bottom left-hand corner where it says apply now, that's for the employer. That's for the employer. And let's see on this adventure of Zoom or whatever we're on, how that works. I feel like I might be going down a rabbit hole. I don't know why. Oh, no, it worked. Do you see a different screen?
Looks great. Yep, log
Okay.
in.
Thank you very much. And that's exactly where the employer would go. In 2019, October of 19, after a year of working with writing a grant, receiving that, working with DTMB partnership. All I could think of was DOL there for a minute. Too many D's in our acronyms, Russ. Working with, in partnership with our IT folks, we stood up a web portal. So now, in this case, apprenticeship programs can apply via the web. They don't have to mail stuff anymore. They don't have to try to get paper copy. We don't have to try to lose emails in the plethora of emails that we get every day. And so it makes it really easy. All the school has to do, and when this says school, it should also be apprenticeship as well. This says school's already approved, so we wouldn't go there. Submit an initial application to certify veterans and other eligible dependents for their veteran benefits. And that's where we would want to start. So you would check your eligibility, excuse me, type. Oh, well, in this case, we probably would select apprenticeship. Is there an apprenticeship approved by the USDOL? If it says no, if we select no, it's going to say, well, you can't do this. You might want to contact the DOL. If it says yes, it's going to lead us in the tree and allow us to create the account, because that's really the common, the baseline. In fact, even when employers call us, are you approved? If they say no, we generally, excuse me, we generally, I think I have a tendency, I send them back to Russ, because Russ understands his geographic region of where he wants that farmed out to. I don't keep up where everybody's at, but nonetheless, we ensure that we do an introduction, usually email, and a handoff to our USDOL partners so they can get approved, hopefully with an apprenticeship, and then come right back around and go through this process and be approved via the SAA for GI Bill programming. Okay, so I hit on that. I want to go back here. Let's see how I do. What am I sharing? New share. Really? I think I'm almost done.
We're looking at your PowerPoint.
Okay. Yes, you
Perfect.
are. What do we want to do? Present. From current slide. Is that where you're at?
Yes. Yep.
You
Right
see
on.
You see just one slide?
Actually, we see
The whole thing?
PowerPoint interface.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's fine. But you can see the large slide.
Sure can. It looks good, Troy.
Yeah, so where it says apply for SAA approval via our online web portal, that's where I just, when I hit apply now, that's where it just took you to. So that's really the process. Oh, hey, look, now you can actually see the presenter go through and glide through his slides. And that actually, I don't know where we're at with time, Scott, but product-wise, that's the presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that may be put forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. A great overview and a great place to leave us. Thank you for risking to go out on the web there. We did get a request in the chat to be able to share that website in the chat. So I don't know if that was, I don't think it was answered yet. The question.
Comment.
What's that?
I got a comment.
Sure. Yep. Just one second, Russ. So we do have, thank you so much to each of you that are placing questions in the chat. We will roll through those. Russ, please proceed with your question.
Thanks, Troy, for a great job. I just want to let everybody know that I've been working with Troy ever since I've been here. And Troy knows his business on the GI Bill, and we try to take care of our business. It's been a great partnership. And I believe with what we got with Senator Peters and this addendum to our new standards, it's just going to make it more transparent as we move forward for getting these benefits to the GIs and what benefits they're entitled to. But again, Troy, a great presentation. It's always been been nice to work with you over the years, and when you present a lot of this information, it's always good for me to hear it again. Thank you.
Yeah, you have heard it a couple times. You're welcome, Russ. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Troy, we've got several questions. They look like good ones. And then a comment, which was LOL, which is laugh out loud. So you must have injected some humor that we understood. Thank you for that. Next one's a little tougher than LOL. This one is, please speak on how the introduction of the intermediary role affects the process for the state approving agency. So what if the apprenticeship is being sponsored through an intermediary? What impact does that have?
I just want to get my words correct here, because I mean, I can give you the five and dime answer real quick. Essentially, we historically, and it is still the case, approve, and I don't know, does everybody understand what intermediary means with the question?
You know, that's an excellent comment,
Russ,
and I'm not,
if you don't mind,
confident.
If Russ or one of his folks could explain intermediary, I will then go through and speak of that to the GI Bill.
Great point. Thank you. Russ, would you be comfortable to do that?
So an intermediary is basically a holder of overseeing many sponsored standards. So for instance, we've got several intermediaries across the state, Western Michigan, up in Traverse City area. And underneath that intermediary, they could have several different companies. Sometimes they're all advanced manufacturing. Sometimes there could be medical, advanced manufacturing, energy. And so, but they're the holder of those standards, and then they're responsible for the welfare of the apprentice. Actually, they do some of our work. They go out and do the site visits, and but then we again, when that apprentice graduates, we issue that certificate of completion. Again, though, they still abide by the same regulations if they were standalone, non-joint or joint programs.
Okay, thank you. I think probably what we should ask is, are there any questions about intermediaries? And then Troy, thank you for kind of breaking the question into the right components. So any questions about intermediaries or comments? And thank you, Russ. And we have several in Michigan. Russ gave us examples, and then back to you, Troy.
Sure, and thanks, Russ. Appreciate that. The way the programming works presently, but much like the Valor Act, laws can change. We actually approve the entity that holds the apprenticeship standards. So in this case, the intermediary would be that entity that holds the standards. The appendix, I believe, will, if they have business entities underneath them, as Russ was kind of saying more eloquently, that are abiding by those standards, that will be an appendix of agreement. I might be butchering that methodology, but to the best of my knowledge, that's how that works. But for GI Bill purposes, we have to go back to the entity that actually was issued the apprenticeship standards. So in this case, it would be the intermediary that might be Hopscotch Incorporated, and then underneath Hopscotch Incorporated, Acme Screw and Die are in agreement with an appendix, from what I've seen, to abide by those standards. But for our purposes, the approval purposes, it's the intermediary.
Okay, thank you, Troy. Great question, by the way. Next question is, does the zip code reflect where the veteran actively served or the veteran's current HOR?
Scott, can you tell me what HOR means? No, I mean home of record. I get it. And that's a good question. I apologize if I wasn't clear. It is actually the zip code of where the standards are held.
Oh.
So, in other words, it's the zip code of the employer. If we approve Scott's tree trimming in Adrian, Michigan, then that BAH, basic housing I'll just simplify it. The BAH is paid for the zip code of Adrian, Michigan. Now, the veteran might live in Ann Arbor, and they transit every day to Adrian for employment. That doesn't matter. It is the zip code that the VA pays based on the employer's zip code.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And no, I would have had to guess, but I couldn't have given you HOR. So an employer has completed all 3 sections of the documentation, appendices included. What could cause an employer not to be approved?
There's honestly not many things any longer. We used to have to do a site visit. DOL obviously does that, or the intermediary in that particular instance. I've had some where they got delayed because maybe an older set of standards, because they don't all have to be brand new standards. I mean, they could have been written 4 years ago. But maybe, sometimes there's lag times, whereas when we get them in and I kind of look at it and I go, 4 years, everything could be totally still applicable. But I wonder if the wage rates are the same as 4 years ago. So then I'll kind of double back on the employer and ask about current wage rates. And sometimes they are, a 4-year lag, sometimes they're not. So then we kind of get in, once again, that collaborative effort between Russ's team, ourselves, the employer, kind of get everything kind of like smooched up to what is current. And then once we do that, then we just obviously are able to push that through for the employer. So there's not too many barriers anymore, and between law and our collaborative working relationships with our DOL partners, that's purposeful.
And Troy, this is Russ. I just want to add, I think this is a new act, Senator Peters' bill, this new addendum pretty well spells that out of the role of the sponsor to make sure that the veteran is going to get these benefits, and they got to do their job. And I think that's why we're we're going to make sure this addendum is put in all the new revisions. And I know Mark and Tiffany are going to talk about that later, but that spells it out 1, 2, 3 in that addendum.
Okay, thank you, Troy, and thank you, Russ. So it sounds like there's not many cases where it's not approved. So if there's an eligible veteran and the employer has their registered apprenticeship in line and things look relevant and appropriate to you through the process, it sounds like the approval rate's pretty decent.
It is. Oops.
Okay. Let's see. So this one was the, can we share the link? And I see we don't have it in there yet, but we'll get it there. How long does the federal office have to approve the program? That may have come in before the slide that you talked about. I'm not sure, but maybe not. What was the federal office and how long do they have to approve?
Generally, they're within a 30-day working period as well.
Okay.
And I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying the way it is. I have a colleague, Dr. Shafton Dunklin. Shafton and myself comprise the Michigan State Approving Agency. There's just 2 of us. So as we're pushing not only apprenticeship information, but let's say a Michigan State, a Michigan Tech, they have to update their curriculums. We have to review all of those, 300-400 at a time. All the public universities, all the public community colleges, whereas there's 2 of us doing that, and it's quite a workload. There's only 1 person in the VA for the state of Michigan that reviews all of our work. So it is, once again, not making excuses other than the fact that it is based on workload, but generally within 30 days, they've pushed out what they need to as well. I also make mention that if a employer, if Acme Screw and Die has a veteran that has already been hired and wants to engage and receive his or her GI Bill benefits, we ask the employer to notify us. That's part of our conversation with them. And then we'll say, because there's a veteran already in training, that application will go to the top of the pile. So the veteran hopefully can get paid in we'll say a quicker or a timely fashion. Also, our approvals can go back with an effective date up to 1 year. So what that means is that if Russ and his team, like 3 years ago, approved Acme Screw and Die, 8 months ago, Acme Screw and Die hired a veteran. And about 3 weeks ago, the veteran said, "Hey, I just learned I could use my GI Bill benefits, Acme Screw and Die. Could you get a hold of these people called SAA, whatever that means, and see if I can do that?" Well, if the employer does that, they submit all the paperwork, we can go back in this case to when the veteran was hired for our effective date for the approval, up to 1 year, and then the veteran can receive, we'll say, back pay of benefits.
Wow. Wow, great. Thank you. Question is, will the slides be available to participants this morning?
No. Oh, wait, yes. I'm sorry. I think Scott and his team or Kevin are going to handle that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, they can be sent out with the notes following the session. So thank you, Troy. And the links are on the chat for those who can reach down and grab the chat. They're going to remain there, so there's no hurry. They'll be there till the end of the network meeting, the workshop. There's also a link to the SAA database there. Thank you, Christine. Next question is, can Troy speak a little more about the benefit increase amount or decrease per state, and how is it established?
I think we kind of spoke of that, we clarified that a little bit maybe. We were talking about zip codes for, because it's not necessarily based on state, it's based on, for chapter 33, it's based on zip codes of the employer. So maybe we answered that. I don't know when that question came in. If I could go backward, this is almost like a presidential debate. If I could go backwards, Scott, just for a moment, because you're speaking of the links momentarily,
Yes.
a moment ago. Hey, you know, if I can, folks, don't worry about memorizing this stuff. If you can just put an employer in contact with us, we'll take it from there. I mean, I appreciate, you know, you gleaning this information and hopefully it's useful. But like, for example, those links, just bookmark them. Make life easy for yourself. And when you speak to an employer, you're welcome to give our name, our contact information, et cetera. But at a minimum, just give them that URL, that link, you know, and speak maybe to the GI Bill. And we'll, you know, that'll almost be like a seamless handoff. I mean, you're welcome to do anything you want. You know, you can buy them cupcakes and include us as well. But, you know, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. That's why we stood up the web portal for the employers, et cetera. So go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. Thank you. There's a note that says the entire training event today is recorded and sent post webinar, and PowerPoints will be shared with presenter permissions. And so we just captured Troy's permission to share the presentation, which will happen. Another question is, when and who should reach out to the federal office in a case where the 30-day date may have been surpassed?
If the 30-day date has been surpassed, it's based on workload. I mean, I mean, we track our activity and the VA tracks their activity, and we track their activity that we've prevented or provided to them. So, I mean, that's kind of where that's at. I mean, if there's a veteran in training that we didn't know about from that employer, then I suggest the employer communicate that to us.
Okay. All right. So you're willing to help with those situations?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
But sometimes folks don't like the answer. I mean, in all honesty, because if it's just not there, it's not there yet. But again, the emphasis is there a veteran in training? Because if that's the case, then that just elevates that file, you know, not only in our office, but in the VA's eyes as well.
Okay. Thank you. So is that the optimum time to put the request in, is when there's a veteran in training? I mean, I
No.
realize that there's,
No.
okay,
No, not at all.
it can happen anytime.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's all of the chat questions. Any other questions come to mind from participants or comments? Hearing none, Troy, we will thank you for your presentation, sharing all the information, and look forward to further engagement with you as we expand the opportunities for veterans through registered apprenticeship and GI Bill benefits. Together, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, and the entire team. It's we're really excited that the emphasis has been put on the apprenticeships, and obviously how they can, at the end of the day, benefit the veteran with a vocation and an ability to you know, succeed in life after leaving military service.
Absolutely. I got to say, the slide that you developed there that has the arrows on it is so impressive. I mean, it really sends home the thinking that a veteran can transition into employment and be making a decent living wage, right, while they're also picking up the new skills. And what a perfect kind of a situation where they're working and learning and being able to maintain a family or home as well. So thank you so much for what you do.
Roger that. Go Navy.
Okay, so next up, we will, so I did want to make one comment before we dive into session 3 here, and that would be, we were asked about the meeting on the 4th that Dave had mentioned, and I talked about a little bit. And so we do have an agenda put together for that session, and we'll review that at the close here as soon as we finish session 3. If I forget, somebody just needs to remind me. We'll peek at that and let you know kind of how we see that playing out on the 4th with the employers. And then we're into share my screen. We'll do, well, looks like this one. And we are moving from session 2 into session 3. USDOL standards with veteran addendum. Tiffany Clausen and Mark DeCoster, apprenticeship and training representatives on Russ's team. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So Tiffany, we're not hearing you, unfortunately. Still no, sorry. Still no. So we did hear you earlier today. So Christine, if you or Rhonda can give us a little counsel here. Should we, well, she's sharing her screen. That's working.
If Tiffany can call in versus trying to use her computer audio, that might work. The numbers in the chat, I'll put it again there, again.
Well,
all right.
Scott, this is Mark. I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. And Troy, I really appreciate that. I know I sat through one of your lectures early on, and I really appreciate the update for what's going on out there. But I just wanted to point out real quick, I know we're here to talk about the state approving agency and getting everybody approved, but there is also the veteran has to have eligibility to utilize the GI Bill. So I wanted to just make sure that that is something that people understand. So it's not just the program being registered, but also the veteran having that eligibility.
Yep, thank you. That's a great piece of information. And it looked like, based on some of the first slides, that even if they're eligible, the benefits are going to be different for each one if they're eligible, correct?
That is correct. I'm sure Troy would definitely be able to give you more information on that, but and then anybody from the VA, there's definitely details. Each veteran is going to be a different situation.
I'm sorry, I stepped away momentarily. Am I supposed to be answering something here?
No. I was just saying that each veteran is a totally different situation based on what their eligibility is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And Mark was reminding us, Troy, that in order for that to work for the veteran, first, they must be eligible themselves for the benefits.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I could go on and on as far as, continuing to deep dive. Before a veteran can get paid their benefits, even if they're at a employer that has been approved for DOL programming, has been approved by the state approving agency, so everything is good to go, they still have to get on a program called e-benefits, which is really what the VA drives them to nowadays, and request their certificate of eligibility. And that certificate of eligibility is then used to start the clock, but I'm not sure why the VA does it anymore. I'm sure they have laws requiring it, but certificate of eligibility is then issued electronically to the veteran, and then they bring that into the employer, show the employer and then the employer starts to log the hours to the VA for the benefit purposes. So yeah, it's I just didn't know for our audience here if I had to kind of get into the weeds like that, but it's a good point, Mark.
I appreciate that, because I do appreciate what we're doing here to let the especially employers understand that there is a very easy way for them to be able to get certified and eligible to provide benefits for the GI Bill to veterans, which is just fantastic. I personally used the GI Bill myself before, and it is just an amazing program. So let's talk just a little bit about the addendum for the registered apprenticeship program. So as Russ mentioned earlier, and Troy also echoed, that any registered apprenticeship is eligible to be able to take part in the process to become certified as a GI Bill approved program. So that certainly has not changed. This law is just bringing it to the surface a little bit more to make sure that all of the registered programs understand what is available to them. And any employer that has a registered apprenticeship, I've heard from others that is a very seamless process that actually works pretty well. But I wanted to just let you know that in the addendum, this is really all about letting them understand how the process works. Simply, it's just letting them be aware of the availability of educational benefits for each veteran that they hire. And that they make a good effort towards getting the process started. And if they do have a veteran that's eligible, to help them through that process. And the program sponsor won't deny a qualified candidate. And I know in our standards, especially the older standards, actually, we actually spell out what that credit for previous experience can be, what the credit for related training can be. Some of our sponsors actually go into detail about, what occupations and what specialized MOS they will actually be able to qualify into those programs. So it really depends on each individual program and what the candidate's qualifications are. But we certainly will work with any sponsor or employer, even if it's a intermediary, and help them make sure that they understand what the credit for previous experiences and the related training instruction credit also. So what that allows the candidate to do, to take what experience they have from the military and blend that in with their apprenticeship program for experience that they've already done. And that's an addendum that we can add on to any program that already has a registered program. But our new boilerplate actually has, I don't know if you have a copy of that, Tiffany, actually has a segment built into the standards that actually talks about that's the addendum that's built into our new boilerplate. So any program that's registering going forward will have that already built in, so they can certainly see that, and that's in our requirements for all programs going forward.
Mark, I just want to add with you and Tiffany, to everybody on the call here today, that we're adding this to the programs to do the revision, whether it's a minor or major change. This addendum will be added. Now, all new standards will go by the new standards with that new section 3. So whether you're intermediary or not, this addendum is going to be part for all the changes, whether you have a major or minor change. So the sponsors are very aware of it. Go ahead.
Excellent, excellent. Nope, that's absolutely correct. Anytime that we do a revision, by the way, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that a registered apprenticeship is a living document. So when your situation changes for your company, whatever, you get new equipment or you want to add a new occupation, that's what Tiffany, I, and Mary Beth, we're here to help you guys set up that training program and establish the registered apprenticeship program. And this will definitely inform all of our sponsors to look at what veterans can bring to their program.
Tiffany, can you roll section 3 where that shows that section 3? I don't know if she can hear me or not.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can. Great. There you go. So basically that addendum is separate if you're using for a revision, but in the new standards, there it is, the same language.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments related to the addendum, revision of standards? Mark, thank you for, making the point. It is true, right? I think there's a lot of times we forget that it's a living document and that we can make changes and make it work. It's people are excited when their programs are registered at first, but it sure is awesome, right? That we can at any time add occupations and revise those sets of standards to make sure they work best for the employers. So thank you for that reminder. I don't see any specific questions and hearing none. Anything else, Mark? Are we set?
Well, I just want to say thank you again. I appreciate the time. And I also want to echo Troy's Go Navy.
Okay, yeah, I don't know who all we're fighting with here, but I'm sure I don't see any comments, but I'm sure you're ruffling feathers somewhere. But thank you, Mark.
You bet.
Just want to thank Tiffany too for sharing her screen there. I think it was Tiffany, and
yep,
I know she can't speak to us, but I've been getting texts, and she just wanted. So she's the one at where I've been adding those little sound bites here. But thanks, Mark and Tiffany.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. We can see you. We just haven't been able to hear you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so next up on our agenda is the best practice from Southeast Michigan Community Alliance and Veterans Employment Services. So Rebecca and Lori, if you are ready and willing, we're ready for you.
Thank you. I want to thank those Navy guys for those rides, but the Marines are now here. And we brushed our teeth this morning, so we're ready to go. Thank you so much. I think Lori's going to share our PowerPoint for us for just a second to get that up. If not, Kevin, can you share for us?
Yes, I can. Let me know if you want me to do that.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hi, Lori.
Good morning, Rebecca.
Semper Fi.
My dad was Air Force. I know. He was one of those pretty boys in the office, drinking tea. Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Are you going to start us off, Rebecca?
Yes, so thank you for joining us this morning. Hopefully you will learn something today from this great presentation that we put together in partnership with SEMCA. So we are talking today about developing strong and sustainable partnerships, and we're going to go over this relationship with the SEMCA and the Veteran Employment Services Program. Next slide, please. As you can see, our moderators for today, myself, Rebecca Fleming, I am a regional manager with the State of Michigan Veteran Employment Services Program. I am a United States Marine Corps veteran, Semper Fi, and we have Lori Spicer, the Talent Development Coordinator, Apprenticeship Success Coordinator for SEMCA. Next slide.
Okay, so I'm going to take this one. Rebecca and I wanted to put together a little bit of information about how we facilitated our partnership. And these were the three components that we kind of lived by as we were working through this. We wanted to find effective data for optimal results for both parties involved. So there was a lot of due diligence, a lot of questions, and a lot of conversations. A continuous development of strong communication tools for a shared client base. Again, the same scenario. And then an integration of solid time management and proper response for employers and job seekers. And that you'll see came about with us developing basically our time plan, what we were going to achieve, how we were going to achieve it, and when that was going to happen. Next slide. So the highlights of our collaboration include that we developed a statewide training apprenticeship fundamentals for the local veteran employee representatives. And this was delivered in August of 2020 through Calvita Collins, myself, and Rebecca Fleming. We took the program that myself, Win, and DOL created for our business service team and adapted it to the needs of the leavers. We've been working on our planning for new policies and programs to help us launch the programs offered by DOL for the leaver staff, and that was delivered in August of 2020 also. We are working on our management for engagement meetings for the BSP and the leaver staff to address concerns and best practices, and I'll speak to that a little bit later. We are also working for, and you'll hear a bit more about this, but we work together to launch our Information 101 sessions during National Apprenticeship Week. We chose that platform to launch these, but these are things that we will continue moving forward to provide, maybe on a quarterly basis or twice a year for any interested parties, especially with a veteran focus. I think it will depend on the need, and from the advisement of the VES office would be Rebecca and her group. And then we're, of course, focused on our veteran hiring event, which is November 12th. We were originally going to have an all-day event, but as all good things, we're starting out small. We're having a smaller event with 30 booths for employers that are veteran focused and veteran friendly. So we're very excited about that. And then we're going to continue to increase our collaboration and our employer list, which we have been working on quite diligently within the SEMCA region. And we hope that initially the work that we put in will benefit all of you and engage you to become interested and create your own program in your area to assist with the veterans and the veteran focused employers. Next screen. Okay, our statewide training on registered apprenticeship program. The origin, I think I went over that a little bit. Calvita Collins and I initially got together when she found out that I was working on the training program with the DOL and WIN for our business service team. I found that we needed to do a bit of a deeper dive to explain registered apprenticeships to them and give them the tools that they would utilize when they're out in the field to ask those poignant questions, those questions that would lend an opening for them to discuss registered apprenticeships with the employer, and the ability to discern whether or not an employer really was a good fit. Because to be honest, not every employer is a good fit. When you're selling something, sometimes you've got to walk away because you're not going to be able to provide this great service to everyone. And again, our team was Rebecca Fleming, myself, and Calvita Collins. Our focus on the training was really fun. For the leavers, we worked on Mythbusters. We had there's a lot of things that are said about registered apprenticeships. And just so you know, as part of your packet, you will have our training PowerPoint, which I think the first 3 pages are the Mythbusters, which I think address those issues that are erroneous about registered apprenticeships and allows for some fun in the beginning of the training and some discussion. We found that there was a lot of conversation back and forth in our PowerPoint training. They actually went about 2 hours for that discussion, but it really didn't feel that long because there were a lot of areas to cover. We talked about funding. We talked about the different paths of funding and how to look at funding based on the employer or the participant. We found that that was a much more easily understandable way of looking at it for individuals, especially with all the different funding coming down the pipeline. Employers, have the opportunity to apply for services and funding that is available to them. Participants, their funding is based on their eligibility, and they're registering with an American Job Center through Michigan Works in their area. We then discussed the referral process, because for me personally, the most important part of this endeavor with the leavers was to create a good line of communication and understanding of referral between our business service teams and the leavers, who are housed in our American Job Centers, but they kind of work sometimes parallel from each other. We have some really great examples where they work not independently, but they work together on a lot of different projects and share information. And so we wanted to make sure that the referral process specified who the leavers were going to be providing that information to, a referral on an employer who was interested. And, Rebecca will speak to this too. The leavers are not being tasked with walking in and taking an employer from start to finish on a registered apprenticeship, but it's giving them enough information where they can walk in, discern if it's viable, answer questions about it knowledgeably, and then they are able to refer that to their business service team at the American Job Center where they're located. We talked about partnerships, because I think for me, when I started in this job, that was incredibly important. Creating your stable of partnerships in the area, especially for the leavers when they're walking into an employer scenario or they have researched the employer prior to their meeting, they are going to have an idea of who in their community they might want to bring to the table also. If they find out that an employer is very, very interested in providing assistance to the ALICE population, or they want to hire individuals that may be experiencing a disability of some sort, then they're going to bring MRS to the table, or minority suppliers, or perhaps someone from their American Job Center, their business service teammate. So I think it lends, it's kind of like bringing your superheroes to the table for the employer. And I've been told from employers that they don't feel overwhelmed by that. They feel like they were listened to initially, and they're very excited that we're bringing different players to the table that can help them with the different facets of their pain points, their needs with regard to their business. We discussed the basics of the registered apprenticeship process, because basically this is what it was all about. The basics from start to finish, so that they started learning the vocabulary and could effectively ask questions as we move through the training. We also discussed due diligence on employers. I come from a sales background. I don't walk into an office or with an employer without researching them on the web. And so we provided them a lot of different opportunities and places to go to get information on an employer. We don't want the leavers or our business service team walking in, being subject matter experts on an employer. The last thing an employer wants to hear is everything you know about them. But having some background allows you to really understand what the employer is setting down on the table. If you know that an employer got an award last year for something, and they're bringing up some aspect of that, and you mention that to them, well, yes, that's right. You get, your community service is excellent in the area based on the award you just received, or however they want to verbalize it. That just creates that connection with that employer even more so, because really this is about relationships. Registered apprenticeships, if we're lucky, they happen immediately, but more often than not, we're planting a seed. We're showing our value. We're showing that we can actually provide a service to an employer who right now are in desperate times. So that relationship is the most important, and making good connections. And again, as I said before, the business service team and the leaver communication is very, very important on this. And then we also talked about the MWA difference, because this information will be going out to lots of different regions. And every MWA is run just a slightly bit different. Even though the funding comes down from the state, everyone has their own flavor and their own procedure. And just to be aware of that, and just because we were offering this training doesn't mean it would work for the MWA that they are working with at that time. So adaptation and implementation are something that the leavers are going to want to talk about with their business service team at their AJC under their MWA. Next question, excuse me, next slide, please. And as I said before, we worked with Janine Ernie from WIN and Mark DaCosta from DOL. They were fabulous for both our business service team and for the leaver training. They worked with me on it, and they actually presented with me, which I think really gave a lot of life to the training. And their historical knowledge was absolutely invaluable. I cannot thank them enough for the work that they did with us on this. And so I would ask you, who are your registered apprenticeship experts in your region? Reach out to them, perhaps show them the PowerPoint presentation, which will be included for you to look at, and make it your own. Next slide. Okay, so this is something that's very exciting. I call them fireside chats just because I think I'm funny, but Mark DaCosta has really been phenomenal in affording us the opportunity twice a month at a regularly scheduled time for the leavers and the business service teams to come in and ask them questions. You know, a registered apprenticeship is not a simple negotiation, and what makes it different is the employers. Every employer has a different scenario, so questions will come up. So having them, which I cannot tell you enough how much we appreciate them, Mark, for doing this for us. Twice a month, my BSPs are able to sit down, the leavers are able to sit down and ask questions that have happened during their time in the field in that 2 weeks. And some of the questions are absolutely fabulous that educate myself and everyone else in the group. So I would suggest that as a best practice moving forward. Again, because we know, as Mark said, the registered apprenticeship is a living document and new questions arise with each engagement. Next slide, please. To you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you. So before I start this, I just wanted to say, if you do have registered apprenticeship experts, please send them our way. Have them connect with Lori and I so that we can begin to grow this apprenticeship piece statewide. So we're definitely interested in connecting with those folks. So please make sure that if you have anybody who is a registered apprenticeship expert, that you connect them with us. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the partnership that Lori spoke of. So prior to this, we had a working relationship with Lori. She was in the Jackson area helping National Guard families. So we had some history with Lori. So when she moved from there to SEMCA, we were able to continue to foster and bridge that partnership and that relationship. So that's key as well. If you have these partnerships or relationships that are already established and they're working for you in regards to developing apprenticeships, by all means, continue to connect and connect us with those folks as well. We understand, you know, Goodwill, Salvation Army, all these great places are out there that we can be a part of and continue to grow this at a state level. And finally, before I get to my slide, I wanted to just give a shout out to Calvita Collins, who did a phenomenal job connecting together a lot of the dots for us and getting us started and just supporting us and ramping this thing up. She and the rest of the leaders statewide have done a phenomenal job These leavers are go-getters. They're hardworking. They want to see veterans in apprenticeship opportunities. So if you have not engaged with your leaver in your area, I strongly encourage you to do so. And if you don't know who your leaver is, at the end of the presentation, you'll have my contact information. By all means, you can reach out to me and I will let you know who your leaver is in your area. So I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit, but also wanted to let you know we have some upcoming events. As you know, November is both veteran driven and it's apprenticeship driven. So National Apprenticeship Week, November the 10th, we are hosting an employer apprenticeship session. We're going to provide them with a lot of information. We're going to give them all types of things that are veteran focused, just an overview of services that are provided to them, not only from partners like SIMCA, but other highlights like DOL, talk about the funding, some of the things that we've covered today in this group, GI Bill registration process, how to register on Eventbrite, things of that nature. So that's November the 10th. There was a flyer, I believe, that went out. Lori, was that for this event, that flyer that went out yesterday?
I'll be forwarding the flyer to Kevin Chow so he can send it out to everyone.
Okay, so there is a flyer coming, thank you. November the 12th, we are having a virtual veteran-focused apprenticeship event that's going to help job seekers get into veteran-friendly apprenticeship opportunities. And this is a great opportunity because, again, it's virtual with COVID going on and all that great stuff or whatever. There was a flyer that went out yesterday, and there should be a flyer attached with the information that you received from the session today. So those are just some of the things that we have coming down the line here in the future in this great partnership between SIMCA and the State of Michigan Veteran Employment Services Program. Next slide, please. Wanted to talk a little bit about our employer contact list, which is critically important for both partners in this collaboration. We have a growing employer contact list. I guess it's glowing too, because it's getting big every day. The contact list identifies veteran-friendly employers. It identifies apprenticeship opportunities. It identifies sometimes different jobs because we're asking those employers to get registered on Michigan Talent Connect. It helps us when we're trying to develop hiring events like the event that we have coming down the pipeline on the 10th and the 12th. If you or someone that you know is interested in being a part of this a growing contact list, again, please reach out to myself or Lori. We would be happy to reach out to that employer and begin to engage with that employer, where I shouldn't say my leaver will, because that's what she does and she does a great job of it. We'll reach out to that employer and begin to identify opportunities so that we can connect that employer with the growing talent that we have here in Michigan. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, we hope that you can see just the facilitation between these two programs and how it's not only engaging the community, but it's engaging the employers that are here in Michigan. It's identifying opportunities that are available for not only for us to grow apprenticeship information, but to actually put folks to work. And this is the type of partnership that we want to see grow in Michigan. It should not just be in the SIMCA area. It should continue to foster and grow and bloom throughout the entire state. And so this is just one example. I'm sure that there are other strong examples that are out there where people are successfully engaging together to help individuals secure employment. But we just wanted to share with you a little bit about our success, because it's been a truly wonderful and beautiful, blossoming, and again, glowing relationship between the two of us. So we wanted to share that today. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can definitely put them in the chat. You can definitely ask us, and you have our contact information there as well. So I want to thank you for that. Are there any questions? I didn't see any in the chat. So once again, Semper Fi, and that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Rebecca. And outstanding, right? Just really well done. One step ahead, tying it all together before we could pull this together at the state. But thank you so much for sharing. Love the idea. I mean, you mentioned a lot about the collaboration. And so again, thanks to everybody involved, right? Calvita and also Mark and all of those working to make sure it's successful. That is what it takes. And I think it creates the energy that you both kind of show us, right? Even in the presentation around making it happen and engaging the employers to make it happen. I love the fact that you start out with myth busters and are able to have 2 hours of solid conversation around registered apprenticeship and accessing and really leveraging the experience veterans have and tying the programs together. Just really impressive and appreciate your work. And actually, I think your success, right? So appreciate both aspects of what you're doing. Thank you so much. You're getting some thanks for sure in the chat. I don't see any specific questions. Although, you know, providing your contact information, I think in this case might be the key, because, you know, expanding that to other regions and your willingness to help people get started in doing that just makes a lot of sense. So any other thoughts or comments on that best practice and I think success story? Hearing none and seeing none, I'm not going to weigh in on the military, I don't know, mini war taking place in the chat, but I will be honored to, on behalf of all of us, thank you each, regardless of which arm of the service you're with, for your service. And thank you for all that you've done and that you still do. I know many of you have even been active duty recently, so thank you for your continued efforts on our behalf. It's very much appreciated. Okay, so in a way of wrapping up, Dave Dunkel sent a note. He did have to exit to go to another session, so he's no longer with us. So other than Dave, though, we have our staff of presenters and those that were active in the session today. And beyond thanking them, are there any other questions or comments that come to your minds as we begin to wrap things up here this morning?
Hey, Scott, this is Christy from Macomb St. Clair.
Hi, Christy.
Hi, everybody. I have a question for Lori and Rebecca.
Okay.
I know that you were talking about creating a list of employers that are that have registered apprenticeship programs. Are you talking in your area, Lori? Are you talking outside of your area?
Oh, we're region focused, most definitely, Christy. Thank you for the question. It's great, but it is a suggestion for all regions, because again, this was a small pilot that we started to see how it would work so that we could offer these best practices going forward, and without knowing if all the MWAs, whether they had something like this or not. So definitely the lists are region specific. I think if I can speak for Rebecca, for her team, they are not regionally specific. They cover all of Michigan. The levers, what, Rebecca, go all the way up to the UP, right?
So for our program is statewide, but our levers are definitely specific as well. But their boundaries are vastly different than the Michigan Works are. So for example, my lever covers 2 MWAs. So we are regional, but it's just a different geographic setup of a region.
So the list that you're putting together, Rebecca, is for the entire state, and Lori, you're doing something for the region, the Southeast Michigan region?
Yeah,
or?
we're just pulling out for our region because that's who we are supposed to reach out to. We don't cross boundaries with the work that we do with our levers or our BST team. So we would not be coming into your area. As some of you know, I'll get calls from other regions and contact my MWA and say, hey, I've already vetted them on the phone. Here's a warm handoff. What do you want to do? And that's how I roll. That's how I work it. I think that's fair.
Well, I'm so glad that today was about the veterans, because I have been working with a veteran and WIN and the employer to get their program certified. It's done at the state level and it's sitting at the federal level at this point, and that's why I was asking so many questions. It is a process to let employers know. And when an intermediary is involved, they're the ones who reach out and do the paperwork. So it's been a little confusing for the individual that I work with. And I thought it was interesting while Troy was talking, I received an email from the veteran who's trying to get his benefits. And he was on a long path before he got to me. So we at Macomb St. Clair, we have, since we're in the COVID process, we haven't had it, but we were having in-person monthly veterans boot camps. So the veterans population is one that we care very much about here in Macomb and St. Clair. So I appreciate hearing what Lori and Rebecca have done, and look forward to instituting some of those things in our area. So I thank everybody today, because I thought this was an excellent presentation.
Thank you so much, Christy. And I would love to talk to you offline about your boot camps.
Will do.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca, how many leavers do we have in Michigan? I know you mentioned it, but I'm asking again just to restate. Oh, mute. Thank you.
Is that a $5 deduction? we have.
I couldn't afford it if there was. I'm thankful there's not.
We have 6 regions, and we have 1 leaver per region. So there is a leaver in your area. We have 6 of them.
Okay, thank you. Great, thanks, Christy. Anybody else? Comments or questions?
You know, I have a question. This is Lori.
Lori,
for
please.
Troy, if he's still here. And pardon my ignorance on the subject, but so the employer is registered. The employee, the apprentice, can utilize their GI funds to help pay for their training. Is there any agreement set up between the employer and the veteran other than verbal that the veteran will be releasing this money for the training? Or can that money also be used to offset the wage being paid by the employer, so the employer can free up some of that wage that they would normally use to pay for the training?
So I'm going to suggest that that is an excellent question. I don't know the answer. I also don't see Troy in the participant list.
This is Christy again, because I'm in the thick of it with the participant. My understanding is their GI Bill does not go to the employer, it goes to the veteran. It is to help them with their funding of paying for their bills while they are actually in a training program. And a couple of the hookups that we had is, I love the Mythbusters that you talked about, Lori, is because with this particular thing, the training provider was telling us that the training that he was in was not eligible for a GI Bill because it was non-credit courses, but it was through Michigan State University. And when a registered apprenticeship program is certified by the US Department of Labor, it doesn't matter where the training is for a registered apprenticeship, they go off of the hours that the individual worked to pay those benefits out. So, so I have been navigating waters that are not used to me. And I will tell you, from a standpoint of somebody who's been in the workforce development work for almost 30 years now, that it has been completely frustrating. And it tears at my heart every day, because if I can't navigate it after being involved with what I do for this long, I can just imagine how frustrating it is for our veterans who have to navigate it. And the young man that I'm working with is also doing this on behalf of his brethren and sisterin that are veterans. And so I think that once I have the process in my head about how it works, it's going to be much easier to navigate in the future for those veterans. But one of the things that I will tell you is that this young man that I'm working with had been at this fight for 8 months before he found me, and I've been working with him since November, and we still don't have his program registered and approved. That was a lot of different things because he was not in a registered apprenticeship program. He was in an apprenticeship program with an employer. So it has given me a lot of examples to go out when I go out and talk with an employer to have a registered program, or don't have a registered program, but just have an apprenticeship program, and how making it into a USDOL registered apprenticeship program can benefit not only them, because then they're going to be more individuals that are looking for employment are going to look for employers who are investing in their employees. And so it has been a real learning process for me. And that's why I was asking very specific questions to Troy, because we're approaching that 30-day date. It's been at the state, at the federal level. And so anyway, I don't know if that helped Lori or not. And I'm sorry, but thank you for letting me talk about it with everybody.
Thanks for the response, Christy. It does and it doesn't. I think my question kind of still stands for Troy, because I was under the impression too that the funding was just for the employer to live on. However, how it's being presented seems that it would help with the registered apprenticeship training costs. So I need some more advisement, and if we're able to get that question answered, that would be great, Scott, or I can address with Troy on the side.
Could Russ's group, anybody from there answer that?
Oh yeah.
I'll just take a stab at it, but I believe Troy said before that when the veteran applies for those benefits, they do have a choice. There's times when if they're not in a registered apprenticeship, that can go for their education. But in the registered apprenticeship, if they decide that money goes towards housing or those costs, that's where it goes. As far as taking that GI Bill and giving it back to the employer, I think that's a Troy question. I don't believe that's going to happen though. It's to benefit the veteran, not the employer.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well,
and so without this registration,
I think Mark's going to chime in here too.
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm probably going to date myself just a little bit, but we're going to get out into the weeds just a touch. When I did receive benefits, there was two separate parts of it. One is for tuition for the schools, and one is for the stipend that goes to the veteran. So that is two different things, and that is based on the VA and what they approve at a education program. So it really depends on the school and what they have approved. So that tuition would go directly to that institution, and the stipend would go directly to the veteran.
Thank you very much, Mark.
And again, this is dating myself because this was a few years ago.
Just to say, I think that's why we have Troy answering these tough questions, because I'm not up to date on all of it.
Yeah. But it's a great question. Please do, Lori, please do follow up with Troy. I think he would be very pleased to provide an answer as well that will accompany the insight that we just achieved from the team here. Okay, so anything else as we wrap up? Hearing nothing else, and remembering that I did promise that we would share the agenda for the employer event, which is kind of a culmination of a couple things, a request for the state to help with a state level session that could be run near National Apprenticeship Week, and then also to give an opportunity for Dave's Veteran Friendly Employer Group, the MVAA, a group of veteran friendly employers, to be able to, take a shot at expanding their opportunities, looking at registered apprenticeships. As Dave mentioned, most of the veteran friendly employers on the Michigan list are not offering registered apprenticeships. So we feel like there's a real opportunity there. And Then also to tie in any other interested employers in an event that is going to be a little bit different than this event. And I'll share the agenda for that event. Is the agenda readable? Russ, can you?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there they are. I got a little indicator. It just didn't pop up right away. There it says we're sharing. So it starts with it's a 9 o'clock start instead of 8:30, how we've been doing the launch network sessions. This one is going to be part of a Discover Apprenticeship in Michigan, which is kind of taking off after the national lead on the Discover Apprenticeship marketing campaign. So we're excited. We continue to be very excited about that campaign, which is running in Michigan. Michigan's one of the 21 states. So our employers and our potential apprentices that are currently job seekers or career seekers are going to be seeing some of those advertisements or hearing them on Spotify. And so in this case, we're going to offer some welcome and opening remarks. Our target here is to provide a session for employers and veteran-friendly employers. And then we'll have a general session, which is basically just an overview of what's going to happen in breakout sessions. And during registration, we'll be asking for the interest of the employers that are coming so we can gauge the amount of participation we'll have in each of the breakout sessions. We're going to talk with them about the sponsorship process, starting in a registered apprenticeship program, or revising or adding occupations to an existing registered apprenticeship program. We're going to talk with them about the opportunity for MVAA veteran-friendly programs to increase or improve their status levels or become a part of that program if they're not already. We're going to talk about the opportunities for support and funding through the Michigan Works agencies in the region where their location or locations reside. And we're going to talk about the process for GI Bill approval. If they're a veteran-friendly employer and we're interested in a registered apprenticeship program, it's logical they may also be interested in adding approval or requesting approval for GI Bill benefits. We're basically going to run those 4 breakout sessions 4 times. So the meeting starts at 9. By 10 o'clock, we'll be heading into breakout sessions. We'll have people in each of those rooms. They're going to do a short, very short presentation because the breakouts only last 20 minutes. And then we will be entertaining questions for the remainder of that session, hopefully on a little more intimate level than what we can engage in these larger groups. So similar platform, breakout rooms, it's going to be a one-way entry. So an employer will be set up to head into their breakout session. They'll receive short presentation, answer questions. They can leave if it doesn't fit for them, and they can go back to the main room, which is going to be an area where we can also have discussion about what might make more sense. Also, then they can't go back into that room, but they can go into another room when the 20-minute period is over and start into a different session. Plans to end at 11:20, it looks like, based on the number of sessions we have. Employers can also come and join a session or two, and if they have all the information they need, or we have all the information we need to proceed with them and make sure we can take the next step with them, then they may exit the meeting at large. Questions?
Scott, just share with everybody, I think there's going to be some of us that will be in the general room. They don't want to go in the breakout sessions. That if they have general questions for some of us that are going to be in the general main room, that they can go there also.
Excellent. Yep. Thank you, Russ. Good comment. What am I missing? Development team. Anything else I missed as far as what that event is beginning to look like?
Scott, did you mention that if there is some sponsors that the standards that the follow-up could be during the National Apprenticeship Week for a virtual signing?
Did not. Thank you, Russ.
I
Thank you
think
very
that,
much. If you have, so Russ makes a great point. Sometimes what happens, actually often what happens is we're working with an employer. They're moving through the process of getting their standards worked out. They may be going back and forth with a Michigan Works Agency Apprenticeship Success Coordinator talking about development or funding or what makes sense for their program. They might be working with the ATR and Russ's team to be able to figure out, what's the next step they have to take to complete the registration. Sometimes these events make a great opportunity for us to reach out to an employer that's getting close and say, hey, could we get this done, right? There's a workshop coming up. Any questions you have, we might be able to handle. So we're positioning a follow-up event of sorts on November 12th. We expect it would take place at 9 to 10, 1 hour, to serve as a recognition event for those sponsors that have started new programs. And the idea is accompanying that with a press release so that there's a benefit to the employers to getting a signed set of documents and showing up on the 12th for a bit of a recognition event, less than an hour, where we just roll through those sponsors and employers that have created new programs, recognize they're now offering registered apprenticeship, appreciate their efforts. If we can, we'll do sort of like we do in a physical signing event, recognition event, where we have pictures. If they send us those, we'll be presenting those as we roll through the names. And we'll just have a few words about our appreciation for their efforts and call it a wrap. That will make up the press release.
There's going to be some legwork that'll have to take place prior to this, but between the November 4th event and what all of you, example of Lori and Mark and Rebecca, that team working together with potential sponsors. That's an example of a potential event. I know that right now I've already got a signing ceremony going to take place for a company in Saginaw during that week. I mean, we're so close that we're going to hold that off, and how that's going to actually work, I will say that I don't know for sure, but we're going to try to make it work similar to what we've done today.
Okay. Thank you, Russ.
Yeah. And thanks, Scott, for doing a great job today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you each for attending today. If you have any questions, we're not that difficult to get a hold of. You got here, so you can probably find us. Please reach out if there's something we can help with. We appreciate all that all of you do to help expand apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship in Michigan. Huge benefit to not only our employers and to those that are involved in apprenticeships, especially in this case today, our veterans, but really building the state skill network overall, right, just has a huge impact. So thank you so much. Appreciate your attendance this morning, and please continue to have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you for everybody for attending. I just put a survey in the chat. If you could please provide us with some feedback. We love your feedback to how we can improve our webinars. And just an important note, the registration link has not gone live for the November 4th event yet, but please check back at the Michigan Works Association website to get that link so you can get registered.
Thank you, Christine.